Well, as we've mentioned, it's a problem that affects millions around the world. Emily Buchanan looks now at the figures and the countries where it's most prevalent.
Parents across the world often leave their children for months, even years, to search for better paid work in another country or city. They hope the move will improve life for their family. But what happens to the hundreds of millions of children they leave behind? The UN estimates that 215 million people live and work outside their home country, a number that's expected to rise. And over 700 million people stay in their country but move to the city for work. Across Asia, China has the most left-behind children. But there are also millions in the Philippines and Sri Lanka, as well as 100,000 in Tajikistan. The issue also affects European countries and nations across Latin America. Little is known about the impact migration can have on the children left behind. In China, almost 33% of these children are raised by their grandparents. 2 million are forced to fend for themselves with no adult around. And grandparents or carers may be too old to look after the children. This generation gap can lead to young people feeling abandoned. Left-behind children are vulnerable to sex trafficking. In one Chinese province, 34% of rapes involved these children. Many were under 12, some as young as 5. In Mexico, 17% of children will see their father leave at least once during their childhood. Most of these children then suffer from psychological problems. And living in a migrant household can lower the chance of finishing high school. Boys leave home to work. Many girls end up doing jobs around the house. On the upside, money sent home by migrants can also keep young children at school, and it means they can afford to see a doctor when sick. With the number of people moving abroad set to double by 2040, families will face more of these dilemmas in the years to come.
Let's take you to Geneva now and talk to UNICEF's Regional Child Protection Officer for Europe, Jean-Claude Legrand. Jean-Claude, thank you very much for being with us. We just saw the rather poignant story from Bangladesh there, but how widespread is this problem, this issue around the world?
It's a big problem, you know. It has been ignored for many years, and of course there is no official statistics on the issue. So it is rather difficult to provide estimates. In addition, the economic crisis of 2008 had a major impact on the economic migration of parents. But at least in our... Yes?
I was just going to say, do you think one of the reasons it's been ignored as an issue is because for so many of these people, they simply have no choice? They leave their children out of necessity.
Yes, for many parents, it's a very difficult decision. It's a terrible move, and we know the situation in which the children remain, particularly during the first year, where 50% of migrating parents are not in a position to send any money back home, for example.
What do you think the biggest issue is for these children, the biggest challenge? Is it the feeling of abandonment?
Yes, it is. It is a problem of social inclusion. You know, we know about the emotional impact. We know that children tend to withdraw from family and community life. We know about the school dropout. And we know as well about the fact that they get involved in at-risk situation for young people, being drugs, early sex, and of course including migration as well, you know. And the fact that many of these children are provided with better conditions, but in fact are doing less well in school.
Yeah, and they're subject to trafficking as well. I know that's a key issue. But without meaning to sound defeatist, Jean-Claude, what can be done?
First of all, there is an issue of protection of these children. And it is very complex because in most of the countries, migrating parents cannot announce officially that they are migrating because the issue is not necessarily legal as such. But it will be important that there is some kind of monitoring of the situation of the children. Very often they are left with a granny, like we saw in Bangladesh. But many children, more than 20% of them, are left alone as such, you know, and they are ill prepared for that, and ensuring that community networks or community social workers would visit them on a regular basis would already be a first key point.
Jean-Claude, thank you very much for joining us from Geneva. They are known as the left-behind children, the millions of youngsters raised by relatives because their parents have moved away for work. To put food on the table, parents often feel they've got no choice, but the children can have feelings of abandonment. In a moment, we'll look at just how widespread this is around the world. But first, Shahnaz Parveen has been talking to children and carers in Bangladesh to find out how they cope.
They could be father and son. But 8-year-old Mushtaq is being raised by his grandparents. His parents left for Lebanon when he was just 2.5 years old. He's only seen them once since then.
My mother is fair and my father is dark-skinned. I don't remember much. I don't remember much. I was very little.
Video phone calls are the only way to keep the bond alive. Mushtaq's grandmother keeps a watchful eye on him, but finds it hard bringing up another child.
Of course, it has been difficult to raise a child, but I do this for my daughter. I'm always scared. What if he gets ill? What if there is an accident when he goes to school? These thoughts are always at the back of my mind. I'm always scared, but we do what we have to do.
Mushtaq's parents shower him with gifts, but not everyone is so lucky. 12-year-old Sanjida's mother left for Hong Kong 2 years ago. Since then, she's had to grow up fast, leaving her childhood behind.
I often have to do household chores because my mother is far away. Sometimes I tidy up the house, help my aunt cook. I probably wouldn't have to do all these things if my mother was home. But I know she's away because she's earning money for us.
Sanjida had no help in learning how to live without her mother. But social worker Arti Rani is trying to support one young boy whose father left for Malaysia a few months ago.
I have been working with this boy for the past 3 years. His mother tells me that after his father left, he stopped eating. He sits quietly. These children grow up in a tough situation where they have no other option but to be strong.
Nobody knows how many children in Bangladesh are growing up like Sanjida and Mushtaq. What we do know that there are 8 million Bangladeshis working abroad, and they sent $15 billion last year. Vital money for a growing nation, but at a high emotional cost for children and parents alike. Shahnaz Parveen, BBC News, Dhaka.